Hello, this is Jordan Baldwin here, filling in for Hyam Goldman, the Watchman, and you're listening to 101.1 FM, AM 1460, The Peak News. And we're here today doing a special guest-hosted show as the owner of First Amendment Media, which I started. It's a company that I started 2 to 3 years ago. And we also have today on our show two other guests. We have Yolanda Edwards, fellow investigative journalist and legislative correspondent. And we also have a special guest from the Department of Education, local educator, that we're going to get to later in the program. We're excited about the program today. We appreciate the opportunity to come on the Peak and report the news, report the truth, report what's happening locally in the community. So what we really wanted to do today was kind of highlight First Amendment media. This is a business and culture day in a way, because we're going to be talking about the business of First Amendment media and the culture behind what we're reporting on. So as some of you may know, First Amendment Media is a company, a media company that started in the Colorado Springs area. It was started by me. It was started officially last year. It's a year old officially, a little over a year old, but unofficially it started 2 to 3 years ago when I was reporting independently in the area as a citizen journalist, trying to uncover local stories that I had found, things that I maybe had seen, things that were concerning, or things that weren't getting covered on the news. And I wondered, why is this? Why is this not getting covered? Why is nobody speaking out against this? It doesn't even have to be speaking out. It could just be the public knowing what's going on from an unbiased standpoint. And that's how it should be. That's what news should be doing. They should be going out and getting the hard stories and getting it from an unbiased standpoint and telling the story, getting both sides, not just going in trying to create a narrative. And you see, that's many times what I was seeing is one-sided narratives pushed by the media, and then people's voice wasn't getting out there, or events weren't getting out there. So 1A Media started inspired by local citizens and law enforcement who we had talked to, going out to report on things such as the Pride celebrations, seeing that there's a lot of things going on there that I would go as far to say many people don't know, or they aren't aware of, they don't know are happening. And in talking to citizens and law enforcement, we learned that there's a lot of discouragement. There's a lot of discouragement with the legalities and the legislation in Colorado. And not only with that, but the coverage of these things that need to be talked about. And you see, that's where good policy gets made. That's where good changes start, is when we can sit down and discuss the hard things, when we can sit down and confront ourselves with the hard things and be intellectually honest with ourselves about the issues. So the heart of First Amendment Media is investigative journalism. We have developed into a media company that does other things. We cover other areas, but the heart of First Amendment Media is investigative journalism and showing up where corporate media is not showing up and giving that story and that situation a voice. And why does that matter in this day and age? Why does that matter in this time right now? Well, I'd say it's because God put us here for such a time as this. And especially with First Amendment Media, we see the White House allowing people to come in, and independent journalists and podcasters to come in. They're making a space for them. And this is a new thing. This isn't something we saw before. So First Amendment Media just happens to be on the scene in such a time as this. And we work with national news agencies, local news agencies, and we've been blessed to work with some pretty big names that have pushed our work out there, and God has really blessed us. But if there's anything I could really say about First Amendment Media, it's that it's a Christian company. And our motto, First Amendment Media, is truth, faith, and hope. Truth leads to faith, and faith leads to hope, a hope that doesn't disappoint. You're listening to the Peak News. I'm filling in for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, and we'll be back here with you. Stay tuned. Okay.
The school board.
So we're going to open up with the 2A. I don't have a clip, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quote Melissa real quick.
Okay. So 2A rallies next. Cool.
It's 25008, right?
What was that?
25008.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I was like, that one I haven't been looking into.
We are about to vote this morning.
Super fast. Write down the order that you're going to, just like
Yep.
the number.
Okay.
Did you get my clip from Jill? Oh, man. Okay.
Go to YouTube super fast. Because you have the clip on YouTube.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
Go to that clip, whichever one you want. Okay.
How much time do we got?
We have like 2 minutes.
There you go.
Okay, we can do this. Here we go. Here it is.
And then I'm going to snap this from you. Is it?
Yeah,
okay,
you can
it's
take my
unlisted?
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know if that's where it is, but yeah, it's right in there around that point.
Oh, shoot. It's around the 12-minute mark.
Here, let me. There we go. There we go. So it's. So I'd say it's around.
Can't be around. Needs to be exact.
Yeah. Okay. So it's right after here. Right when this stops shaking. There we go. So it would be. I'd say 22. It's right around there, right? 22 or 21.40. You could start it there if you want, but and then you know where to cut it. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Why it wouldn't have sent it. It said it sent it.
Okay. And then where's the shoot me a text of like the words,
Okay.
and it's around what's the minute mark? 12 something. Give me a minute. Mark.
21 I'd say 21.40.
I think.
We gotta hurry.
21.40.
I can take that to him if you want. Or does he have it?
And I'm Jordan Baldwin, and we're back here on the Peak News. I'm filling in for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, And I'm here with Yolanda Edwards, fellow investigative journalist, who's going to be helping me today to break down some of this stuff to you. So, Yolanda, I just wanted to introduce you. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Thanks for being on. And thank you for helping out at the Peak. Yolanda's done such a great job filling the gap in citizen journalism. She's been showing up to the citizen journalism meetings. She's been getting right in there and helping wherever she can. And she's also been doing a lot of videography work and reporting for First Amendment media. So I wanted to talk to you about a couple headlines today, a couple original headlines that we have for you. As you know, we went to the 2A Protect Your Rights rally just recently. In one of the hearings of SB 25008, there's a lot of gun bills that are going on right now. And you see, I'm sure everybody's aware of it, but we have a lot of outrage. When we went up there to cover this event, this rally, we saw a lot of different people. I mean, there was people from all different walks of life. I saw just not conservative Republicans there, but all different types of people. What I also saw was a lot of outrage. They had law enforcement speaking there. They had representatives speaking there, and even saying just things that were very concerning for me, that what's happening in the House and the Senate right now is not a reflection of the will of the people, and that the legislation that's going forth and being put through is possibly conflicting with constitutional rights. That's what I heard. And as you know, we're First Amendment media, so constitutional rights are a big thing to us. I mean, I believe that it all connects, and our 2A protect our 1A, as some would say. So I think it's important. But what we saw up there was a lot of local business owners. So we have a website, www.1amediagroup.com. And you can go there and you can find our video reports, and you can look into some of this a little further and listen to what we're talking about and actually watch it. But we were out there live streaming and filming that day and talking to people. And Melissa Flanell was out there, daughter of Dragon Man. As you know, Dragon Man's is a big gun, I'd say, shop in the community, maybe one of the biggest. And it's a local staple of the community. There's even a museum out there, I believe. So Dragon Man's daughter was out there. We had other local business owners, gun shop owners, and people even saying that they were putting their business on hold to come testify, that they were putting this first and foremost as the first priority because they felt like their rights were under attack. So as many of you may know, this particular bill had progressed through the House, SB 25008, and did pass through the House. Now we're seeing that it's going on, it's moving on. But there's other pieces of legislation that are passing through. And like I said, go to www.1amediagroup.com. We don't have time to cover it all today, but in regards to ammunition sales, in regards to a lot of different things. So that's very concerning for some people, and we're going to continue to stay on that because I believe the media isn't covering that in the way that it should be covered. But another thing that I wanted to bring to you is the ACA policy that we have been covering here. So the ACA policy is something that we listened in on in the non-action item session, where they were talking about this update to the policy they had drafted around 1039, which is the non-legal name changes of school. When we were out there, we ran into a woman, and she was on the board, but she was also a local educator. And I just wanted to play this clip for you and kind of set this up. This was us out there. And do we have that clip, James? Or okay, so let's do this. Let's put that on the site. Check out our site, www.1amediagroup.com, and you can actually go and see this whole thing. But what this woman had said, and this was actually one of the board members, but she was speaking as an educator, is she said that she felt like there was compelled speech going on in regard to not notifying parents, things that children were deciding. The parents were being not, they weren't being notified. It was being kept from them. And it seemed like that was not okay with her. And she had a lot of concern about that. And she even went on to say that she believed the HB 231039 will be challenged. And, wherever you stand on this law, I think that it's an important thing to remember that this law in particular was just implemented. It was just rolled out. So now we're seeing everything around this play out. We're seeing school boards draft policies to cater to this law. And the ACA policy was D11's local adaptation of this 1039 law, which was the non-legal name changes in schools. But what they did recently was included parental consent into it. So we have HB 231039. You can read it, but they went a step further to say if they're going to make this name change, the parent needs to be notified. And you see, this is a new thing because we don't see a lot of or any other school boards doing this. So that's why we were out there covering that issue and that update. I don't think it's getting the coverage it needs. And I think that we're going to need to continue covering stuff like that. But when we come back, we're going to have a special guest on. We're going to have the person who said this, Jill Haffley, that was on the board. She's a local educator for 25 to 30 years. And I think she has some particular insight that people need to hear. Insight that's very important. And that's what First Amendment media is all about. And that's why we like to partner with Peak News, because we're all about saying the quiet stuff out loud. Don't forget to check out church voter guides. That's also a big part of saying the quiet stuff out loud in way of just telling the church what's going on from an unbiased standpoint. As you know, we have the elections coming up. These are a non-biased 501c3 compliant voter guide for the church. And you see, that's what it's all about, folks, is getting the truth out there from an unbiased standpoint, giving a voice to the voiceless, and challenging the narrative. Because what we're here to do is to take back the media, to take back what's been lost. And there's been a lot lost. So when we come back, that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring on Jill. We're going to bring her on by phone. I think we have that all good to go and geared up. And we're going to talk to her about her feelings on this policy and her comments that night. And you see, it's not too often that we have the opportunity to talk to former educators or educators about this type of thing. So do we have a 34-second clip we can play before we go out here? So this is very important, and I think we do have a clip we're going to play here of Jill. So let's play that and hear a little bit of what she had to say. That was Jill Haffley, and we're going to be back here on the Peak News talking to Jill, 30-year high school teaching veteran who was elected to D11 school board. We'll be back. Do you have the number? I just step out and there's a cafeteria around down the hall.
Also, one of the two that's on the live stream watching might be mine.
And we're back here on the Peak 101.1 FM AM 1460. I'm Jordan Baldwin of First Amendment Media, filling in for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. And as you know, in the last segment, we had talked about the ACA policy update and the D11 school district. And we have Jill Haffley here today with us. She is a local educator of, I believe, 25, 30 years, high school educator veteran, and also on the board at D11. Do we have Jill here with us? All right. Can you hear me, Jill? Awesome. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much. No problem. So is it official now that parental involvement has been adopted into this ACA policy in D11? Gotcha. Okay. And so I know that you said you've been an educator for a while and you have an inside perspective on this. And I know that's how you're here today, speaking as an educator. But you do have a lot of expertise on this. Do you think that this policy update in D11 could become a model for other school districts interested in following suit? Excellent. I know in D49, we heard about some potential policy updates with biological men and women in regard to that. And we hear about the parental rights update in D11. So a lot going on with this issue. Do you anticipate any pushback or adjustment period for districts like D11 that are creating policies around 1039 and these policy updates that may involve parents? Do you see any pushback for that coming, or what do you think about that? Exactly. Well, and I think that's a pretty common sense update around 1039, no matter what side of the bill you're on. I mean, this is something I believe that we could all agree on, and uh, I think that's something that's very important. Is why are these other people wanting to not involve parents? What's behind that? Have you have you seen an increase in like identity fluidity within the school system recently? Would you say that that's coming up more and more? 10 seconds. W- We'll be we'll be right back on the peak.
Oh.
I'm Jordan Baldwin here on the Peak News, filling in for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, on 101.1 FM, AM 1460. And I'm here talking to Jill Haffley today, educator of many years, veteran, local educator in the D11 district, and also on the D11 school board. Do I still have you there, Jill? All right. So when we left off, you were talking a little bit about how common these issues are and what you were seeing. Could you continue on for us, Jill? Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, we've heard that there's these whole identities being built up sometimes that are established at school, and then they have an identity at school that's being kept from the parents, and the parent doesn't know. And this just creates a bad situation for the child to be in the middle of that. So I think it's important to elevate voices such as yours. Like I said, whatever side of the issue you're on, it's very important because right now, we need to be able to talk about this. We need to be able to have this hard discussions because that's how good policy gets made. And so, lastly, here, Jill, in regard to your statements that night about you feeling that this probably will be challenged, this HB 231039 legislation and the rollout of it. Do you have anything else to say to that you'd like to follow up with this evening? Yeah, some would call that coerced speech. So that's yeah, and that's kind of what I feel like a lot of people see going on. So, as First Amendment Media, as the Peak News, we really appreciate you coming on the show today, Jill, and we want to have you back soon. We want to let you know that we're keeping you in our prayers, and we want to encourage everybody else to do the same. And thank you so much again. And if there's anything else you wanted to hit on before you leave today, please do go ahead. If not, we'll have you back soon on the Peak, Jill. No problem. Great closing comments. So that was Jill Haffley with D11 School Board here today speaking as a local former educator, also a veteran in the community, a very important voice. And we plan on having Jill back. So I wanted to move on today and give a little context around this piece of legislation, 1039, that we've been talking about, which is non-legal name change in schools. As many of you may know, this piece of legislation, I'll try to get it up on the site, was even wrapped around something called Tiara's Law. It was almost like a Tiara's Law which Tiara's Law was legal name change for adults. It's HB 23-1071, I believe. So back when these bills were going through committee, First Amendment Media was on the ground at the committee hearings covering these pieces of legislation. Now, I specifically was there myself. I remember when 1039 was going through committee, they brought the Youth Advisory Council out, and there was a lot of testimony on each side. We were new to the Capitol at that point. We are not part of the Capitol Press Corps, but we were covering this. We were filming. We were giving more visual context, and we were basically, so they came against us for that. And they even called the police on us at one point for a mistake that they made, total miscommunication. And they had to end up apologizing to First Amendment Media. But you see, that's the level of what's going on here, is that there's a lot of emotions around this issue. There's a lot of tensions around this issue, so much so that it caused legislators to call the state police on us. And, I will give it to them. They did apologize. They did repent and fess up. And everything was good that day. We continued on with our coverage. And we worked that issue out. We talked to the Speaker of the House, had a meeting with her, and everything was great. But that kind of launched our coverage into the Capitol. When we saw that and we realized there was a major gap to fill here, because they didn't want this filming in the committee hearings in such a way, because you don't see a lot of people doing that. And we were there covering the stuff that other people weren't. And we were willing to report on the stuff that what other people weren't. And not everybody was happy with that. So that's what First Amendment Media is all about. Again, we're a Christian company, and we're here to give the community a voice. We're here to promote the truth. But today I wanted to talk to Yolanda Edwards. Yolanda's been up there covering this stuff with us. She's been at the Capitol, and she has now become our legislative correspondent. Yolanda, how you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So we've covered quite a bit. We've went to these committee hearings, protests. There's been quite a bit. I can recall one thing in Manitou Springs, I believe it was last year. We were covering a Pride celebration, and they basically ran us out of town. I remember they told me they were going to jump me, and the police didn't even want us there filming when other people were filming alongside of us.
Yeah, Parasol Patrol definitely targeted us that day. They sent an angry mob to chase us around, and it was an interesting day. The cops there definitely were very not helpful very not helpful that day, and it was kind of disappointing. But that gave me a bit of a fire to want to keep doing this because if someone's going to tell me no, then I kind of feel like I have to now.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that usually when we're seeing that type of a situation where people are going to such efforts to conceal something, that seems to spark my interest more when you say it does you.
Definitely.
So that's maybe what drives First Amendment media lately over the past few years. And I'd say that we're going to continue on in that mode. And we do a lot of investigative reporting as well. We have been investigating what's going on in the schools. We've been investigating the books. We've been investigating pride celebrations because when we went out to this, we saw that there was some things going on there with children that I don't even think is anybody could say is okay in any way, shape, or form. It's not subjective. It's wrong. And even the police that I've talked to are very discouraged that this is going on. So this is, we have this interconnectivity of legislation that's going forward, things that people are frustrated by, things that are directly tied to DEI agendas or constitutional issues. And then we have the rollout and the implementation of it. And that's what we wanted to present to you today. And the rollout and implementation of some of these horrible pieces of legislation that people have told me about, people that are coming out of the woodwork to try to voice their opinion on, I'd say those pieces of legislation are what need to be covered the most. And yet we have a lack of coverage in mainstream media, almost ignoring those things. So that's why we started sending Yolanda Edwards up to the Capitol this year, because we realized there's a big gap to fill, a huge gap to fill. So we want to see if we can play one or two of these clips here from her when we get back. But we have some clips here from you of her coverage and of everything that's been going on and what we've been covering. And you see, we have ran into so many issues in covering all this. It's crazy. So you're going to see some of that. Check out www.1amediagroup.com to see a little bit more of that. And when we come back, we're going to have a segment with Yolanda Edwards and what she's been covering. Don't miss the Peak News final segment with Yolanda Edwards as she plays her clips and introduces her new coverage to you here on the Peak 101.1 FM.
So we're going to go into the Women's March?
Yeah,
First? Okay.
There was just so much to talk about. I felt like, so let's do this. So it didn't make it as confusing for him.
Because he thinks that the Women's March is first.
I know.
Okay.
We're not going to do we're just going to kind of group them together.
Okay.
And we'll just do it in that order. So I'm going to open it up. I'll say, Yolanda, you've been covering this. We've went out to protest together. And then just the other day I was misgendered and you got in there and we're able to ask some hard questions. We're going to go to the misgendered clip.
Okay.
Okay. And then when I say, and you're able to get in there and ask some hard questions, play the clip. And then you can go to, you can start talking about it and say, and I was wondering why there was men leading a women's march.
Right. Okay.
That clip. And then if
Okay.
if you have time,
Misgendered, men leading women's, and
and then from there, because that's a better flow, go into the legislature and play the clips you have time.
No,
If you don't have time, don't play them.
After.
Yeah,
English will be after men leading women.
Yes.
Okay. If you guys want, you guys can have the whole 7:30.
Yeah, that would
Bump Jim.
that would probably be better.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think? Or do you want to? What do you think?
I think
Did
that's
you
right.
got a
No, I
good
think
one,
that's
or
good.
I mean, if you got
It was
something
just
that's
gonna
in,
be something related to his run for office.
well, no, just play. Yeah, play Jim Rant, because don't we have a minute and something coming up after that for a close?
Yeah,
But it's just for me to.
just
Okay.
to close out the show. Go ahead and as soon as you hear the bumper, as soon as it starts, hit that timer
Okay.
and count up to 5 minutes. And then if you guys are like on a roll and you're like, we should just get through these clips, then send it. But if you're like, I'm not feeling it, say, all right, upcoming next Jim Miller with the Peak Grants.
That sounds like a perfect plan. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you so much, brother.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, honestly, I have so much I could say. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll get it in, and I will be very quick. I'm not going to use a lot of time to set up that misgendering clip
Okay.
and then introduce you and let you take it.
You were accused of misgendering, is what happened. You were
Correct.
accused of
Thank you.
misgendering.
Thank you for
Yep.
that. Yes. I'm getting desensitized to it, man.
Yep. Fun stuff.
And that's why we have Yolanda Edwards. And we're back here on the Peak News 101.1 FM, AM 1460. Jordan Baldwin filling in for Chaim Golden, the Watchman, here with Yolanda Edwards, local legislative correspondent. And we were just talking about the work that we're doing with Yolanda Edwards as First Amendment Media in the Peak News, one of the Peak News new investigative journalists. So recently, we've been going out to a lot of these events, these protests on top of the committee hearings and all this stuff. And we went out to the Women's March recently. And I would say Yolanda was doing a perfect job of covering that event because she's asking the questions that need to be asked. And she's asking hard questions. So I was very pleased with the coverage there. And I didn't have too much luck because they had accused me of misgendering somebody, which I did not intentionally do. So I want to cover that today. I'll play that clip for you, and then we're going to let Yolanda Edwards talk about what she's been covering. And that was Yolanda Edwards covering the local women's march that we were just at recently. Yolanda, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your coverage lately?
So we went out to the Women's March on International Women's Day. That was March 8th. There was 2 marches that day. Indivisible put on one, which was I thought was a great march. It was a women's march led by women, for women. And then we got to the second march, which was put on by the People's Coalition, which I thought was very, I was a little concerned that it was men totally leading this march. There was, I think, 4 megaphones around, and the march was totally all men yelling into these megaphones. There was one point I had to stop one of these men. I was like, give your megaphone to this other woman, because it really, it's a women's march. It should have been led by women, but this just goes to show that women are being erased from our own spaces once again. And so when I was out there, I would ask questions. I was like, we have abortion protected in this state. What other rights are we fighting for? And they had nothing. No one could mention any other rights that women needed to be protected on. This came just days after the federal government killed, our senators killed, the Women and Girls Sports Act at the federal level. And it's astounding to me that the only thing that we care about is being able to kill our own babies.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great coverage there. And I didn't see anybody else out there doing anything like that. So what were some other things that you've been covering, particularly in the legislature? I know you've been up there talking with the legislators and covering these committee hearings. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So most recently, I covered the bill HB 1073, which is, I'm going to have to also give a little bit of a trigger warning here because this bill was a bit taxing emotionally for all of us who had to listen to it. But it was a protection against child rape bill that was introduced by Representatives Brandy Bradley and our representative, Regina English, here in El Paso County. And unfortunately, it failed. Our Democrats are very, very adamant about not voting with common sense legislation, unfortunately.
Well, and from all sides, I'd say there's just a big gap to fill there with stuff not getting covered, other than this audio feed or this short video feed that some might be able to access, the coverage in general.
Right.
So did you have some audio clips for us of you up there covering this?
Yeah, so I got a couple of things. If we could go ahead and get the one from Regina English whenever she was closing out the bill.
And that was Regina English, local representative here for our district in Colorado Springs. I believe it's 17, correct? And so we hear this, and I just want to thank Regina English for sponsoring this bill, because I'd go as far to bet money that she's receiving a lot of hatred for supporting this bill, and that's very unfortunate. So what have you seen? What else have you seen up there, Yolanda?
I have
2 minutes.
really been paying attention to our local representatives. We also had Rebecca Kelty and Caldwell on that committee hearing as well, and they had some interesting things to say for that.
Say who that was, and then
And that was Rep. Caldwell from Monument, and he is doing great work in the Judicial Committee as well.
So we'll be back here on the Peak. Don't miss another episode. Stay with us. Stay tuned. Stay with First Amendment Media, and we'll be closing out this program when we come back here on 101.1 FM AM 1460, The Peak. And we're back here on the Peak News. I'm Jordan Baldwin filling in for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. And if you find yourself listening today a little bit confused, maybe a little bit discouraged about what's going on in the world today, what I want to tell you is there is truth. There is one truth. There is one hope. There is one way. And you see, seeking truth outside of ourselves and submitting to it, as Rebecca said the other day on the show, Praying Grandma, seeking truth outside of ourselves and submitting to it is what faith and truth seeking is all about. And you see, that's why First Amendment Media is a Christian company. Because truth is not truth unless it's true. And the search for truth should always lead back to the truth and love found in its purest form, which is found from God himself and the Savior, the Messiah. And you see, it connects to our First Amendment rights. It connects to our constitutional rights. This concept of individuality, that our rights don't come from the government. Our rights don't come from some policymaker. They come from God himself and the freedom of choice, free will that God has given us all. That for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. You see, because it's not God's will that any should perish, but all come to repentance. So what's the motto again of First Amendment Media? Truth, faith, hope. Truth leads to faith. Faith leads to hope. And a hope that maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. Make sure that you stick with us. Check out the Passover at the Pinery on Tuesday, April 17th. Join us, co-hosted by Messianic Jews and Chaim Goldman. We'll be back with you.